So why do you think Epstein became almost like the central figure for all of this corrupt global elite meta cartel?
Well, he's just a microcosm of it, really. But I think
is it his own perversion?
He became too exposed, I think, especially after his first arrest. And as he described it, he became radioactive. But he had, before been able to move through all these different...
Control is slipping and somebody at the top is panicking, trying to grab it back. For years, people believed Oprah Winfrey was untouchable, floating above every scandal like she was too powerful to be touched. But now the pattern is flashing red, and it will not quiet down. This was supposed to be old news, background noise, nothing serious. That story is done. Or at least that's what they wanted everyone to think. But it's not done. What just hit the wire is not gossip. It's a full chain reaction. People are speaking up again. A documentary fallout is still spreading. And that silence, it doesn't feel classy anymore. It feels calculated. Sean Combs is locked up and talking about legal retaliation while a Netflix series stays up without flinching. Then 50 Cent jumps in publicly, reacting like he already knows how this whole thing plays out. Court filings are moving. Release dates now point to late May 2028. Footage described as stolen is still being aired. Claims of career shutdowns are popping back up all at once. Oprah's name is not listed in any charges, but it keeps showing up close to the fallout in ways that make people look twice. When someone walks away from every explosion untouched, it stops looking like luck and starts looking like strategy.
A couple of pets as well. Yeah. A dog and a cat with interesting names, to say the least.
Yeah. That's Oprah.
That's Oprah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now the spotlight is tight on Sean Combs. He's at a low-security facility in New Jersey, serving 30 months after dodging the biggest charges. But he's still facing dozens of civil complaints across multiple states as of December 2nd, and every move he makes pulls more powerful names into view. A 4-part Netflix series drops anyway, loaded with behind-the-scenes footage that his team instantly calls stolen and illegal. Within hours, a cease and desist letter starts circulating, accusing the streamer of corporate retaliation and hinting that lawsuits are on the table. A spokesperson confirms he is still considering legal action, all while his release date quietly shifts again. Now it's set for late May 2028, and that timing has people raising eyebrows. On paper, it looks like regular damage control, but insiders say this is bigger than one platform. Combs is not just fighting Netflix, he's fighting for control of the story itself. And that's where things start spilling over. The series stays up, the footage stays public, and names that once stayed silent around his empire are suddenly popping back into conversations they never planned to revisit. Here's the part that doesn't sit right. His team calls the project a hit job. Netflix fires back with bold confidence, saying, the material is legally obtained and not tied to any prior negotiations. They even point to past courtroom wins over similar claims. That doesn't sound like panic, it sounds prepared. Curtis Jackson, better known as 50 Cent, is listed as an executive producer. He says he had no creative control, but his name alone shifts the energy of this battle. When news breaks that Combs' sons are planning their own controlled series for a rival network in 2026, 50 reacts online with a short post that feels less like curiosity and more like a warning. Original word count, 267 words. Rewritten word count, 278 words. People close to the situation are saying this is not about entertainment anymore. It's about who gets the final word. When Combs' lawyers filed their appeal, criticizing the trial judge and painting him as a philanthropist who was treated unfairly, insiders noticed the tone right away. They said the language felt familiar, like it was built to trigger sympathy instead of facts. But sympathy is not spreading. Silence is. And as Combs' legal stance gets tougher, another pattern starts popping up beside it. This one is not directly about him, but it connects through fallout. Every time his name trends, Oprah Winfrey's name trends too. Not because she is charged with anything, but because of proximity and shared history. Industry veterans are whispering that this is not random. They call it memory reactivating. People are remembering who stood on which stage, who backed which project, who showed up at which event, and who walked away untouched when partnerships fell apart. In the middle of the documentary noise, old interviews are resurfacing. Artists who once said one closed door from Oprah shifted their entire career path are being quoted again. Curtis Jackson, known as 50 Cent, had comments from years back resurfaced too. He once said being denied her platform blocked a certain level of recognition for him. He described her show as a stamp of success, something he felt permanently shut out from. Now the contrast is loud. One man is behind bars, pushing back through legal threats. Another powerful figure, once connected to that same world, remains publicly calm and untouched.
Would be a list does defy common sense for any common criminal. Why would you maintain your own evidentiary criminality? But to Jason Chaffetz's point, that doesn't mean there aren't clients. Just because there might not be a list doesn't mean there are not clients. And Ghislaine Maxwell could be put to the test on naming the names, creating the list after the fact of people that she saw.
That contrast is exactly what has insiders talking. Oprah has not commented on Combs. She doesn't have to, but people tied to multiple production houses say her silence feels like strategy, not simple distance. This is not the first time powerful men fall apart while Oprah Winfrey walks away untouched. The shadow of Harvey Weinstein's conviction still hangs over every industry conversation. Then Seal publicly accused Oprah of knowing about Weinstein's behavior for years and staying quiet. Rose McGowan backed that energy, calling Oprah fake and accusing her of protecting a corrupt power structure. Those statements shook the room when they first dropped, and now they're being replayed all over again. None of these claims are brand new, but they hit different when stacked next to everything happening now. Executives are quietly asking why some past connections get labeled as coincidence, while others get branded as complicity. Critics say Oprah's old statements of shock after major revelations feel polished, especially when compared to how strongly she once condemned certain public figures. This isn't about direct accusations, it's about patterns. And when patterns start looking symmetrical, people start asking questions. The whispers grow louder when the conversation shifts to 2007, when Oprah opened a prestigious leadership academy in South Africa meant to empower young students. Within a year, a dorm staff member faced serious allegations involving inappropriate conduct with minors. Oprah flew in, apologized publicly, removed leadership, and promised reform. Officially, that was the end of it. But rumors didn't fade so easily. Years later, more troubling incidents surfaced at the school, including investigations into student behavior and reports of a newborn discovered on campus. None of these incidents led to legal action against Oprah herself. Still, conspiracy theories spread fast. The question that keeps popping up is how crises seem to erupt under her banner without permanently damaging her reputation. Insiders say the school often gets mentioned during private talks about power and image control, not because of proven wrongdoing, but because of how quickly the headlines fade. And then there's João de Deus, known internationally as John of God, the Brazilian spiritual healer whose past association with Oprah later drew intense public scrutiny. Oprah once praised João de Deus on her show, calling his work inspiring and powerful. Years later, he was convicted of abusing hundreds of women who came to him for healing. Oprah released a statement expressing sympathy for the victims and hoped that justice would be served. But critics quickly pointed out the pattern. First the praise, then the distance when everything falls apart. And now, with old clips resurfacing, that timeline is being questioned all over again. Then add the renewed public focus on Jeffrey Epstein after heavily redacted files were released in December 2025. That alone was enough to shake elite circles. The documents showed powerful networks, missing pages, and names withheld for legal reasons. Oprah is not accused of any involvement, but her name pops up in the same online spaces where conversations about protected elites are constantly happening. At this point, people are not drawing conclusions from proof. They're drawing lines from repetition. What used to sound like separate complaints now feels stacked together in a way that carries more weight.
Wrong, they're suddenly going to be in the spotlight. And that's just a kind of a strange scenario that we're finding ourselves in. As to why they released it, I mean, look, the grand jury materials, I think, were kind of properly protected by a judge who said, no, it's not enough just that the world's really excited and wants to know kind of scurrilous details about Epstein and Maxwell. The judge, I think, properly respected the statutory protections.
Then Cat Williams steps in and goes on record, accusing Oprah and other powerful figures of being gatekeepers. He frames it as structural, not personal, saying influence moves quietly behind contracts, casting calls, and closed-door decisions. His comments spread fast, with fans revisiting old moments and viewing past controversies through that exact lens. Industry sources say casting rooms and boardrooms are suddenly revisiting old decisions with fresh eyes. Executives are quietly asking how many careers slowed down after private disagreements with Oprah's circle. Some people point to the fact that there are no lawsuits against her as proof she's clear. Others see that same fact as proof of influence. Nobody wants to go on record, but the shift in energy is real and it's spreading. At this stage, the Combs documentary feels less like the storm itself and more like the spark that reignited everything. his appeal filing, his legal threats toward Netflix, and his claims of being unfairly targeted all echo language used by other powerful figures before him. The key difference? Combs is isolated right now. He's fighting from the outside looking in. His sons tried to grab back control by announcing their own series, but even that move was met with skepticism from rivals and commentators. Meanwhile, Oprah appears publicly calm. Her brand stands steady. Her projects keep moving. And that contrast is what keeps people talking. The question shifting through private conversations is not just who did what, but who was allowed to survive public fallout. Insiders admit the industry fears imbalance more than scandal, and right now that imbalance is hard to ignore. What's unsettling isn't one accusation. It's how older disputes are sliding neatly into the present moment. Complaints once brushed off as personality clashes are being reconsidered as something more coordinated. When Monique speaks about her career slowing down after she refused unpaid promotional demands, those old interviews are suddenly being replayed with new attention. Original word count, 302 words. Rewritten word count, 318 words. Insiders say the chilling part isn't the money, it's how fast the doors shut. 1 minute you're in the room, the next minute casting calls change tone, invites dry up, and calls stop getting returned. No threats, no contracts broken, nothing you can point to on paper. People close to Oprah insist this is coincidence, but industry veterans quietly admit the same warning gets passed around behind the scenes. Once you're labeled difficult by the wrong person, the machine moves without noise. That framing is resurfacing now because it mirrors what others have described. No big confrontation, no explosive scandal, just a slow fade out. In an industry built on access, losing access is the punishment. And that quiet removal hits harder than any public argument. The same dynamic shows up in how public accountability plays out. Oprah's voice carries serious weight when she chooses to use it, especially in cases involving powerful men accused of serious misconduct. She often becomes the moral center, shaping how the public sees victims and villains. But critics say the intervention can feel selective. When certain figures fall, her condemnation is clear and strong. When others within her orbit collapse, the response shifts to reflection, distance, or silence. Seal's accusation that she knew about Harvey Weinstein's conduct years ago is gaining fresh traction, not because of new proof, but because people are spotting patterns. Rose McGowan's frustration echoes for the same reason. Their words hit differently in a climate where sealed agreements, non-disclosure deals, and redacted files feel less like legal formalities and more like strategy. And when conversations turn to Jeffrey Epstein, heavily blacked out documents reignite public anger. Too many pages hidden, too many names protected, too much power sitting at the top. Original word count, 290 words. Rewritten word count, 305 words. Photographs show elite figures smiling together while entire paragraphs in official documents disappear under thick black ink. The explanation given is legal necessity. The public reaction? Straight disbelief. Oprah's name floats through the same online spaces, not as someone listed in files, but as a symbol of selective exposure. Insiders say this is exactly how conspiracy spaces grow, not from hard proof, but from visible imbalance. When the same powerful names keep appearing near repeated implosions without facing visible consequences, people start filling in blanks on their own. Transparency leaves gaps, and imagination rushes in fast. Behind closed doors, executives are debating whether Oprah's brand is truly untouchable or just moving ahead of the curve.
So what is happening in Hollywood? Nobody knows. The worst thing to call somebody is crazy, is dismissive.
Some credit her ability to step in early, reframing tough moments into reflection, growth, or empowerment before criticism fully forms. Others point out how critics often end up isolated. Accusers get labeled bitter, unstable, or emotional, and the momentum splits instead of building. That's why Cat Williams' recent comments are landing differently now. He talks about structure, not single incidents. He describes gatekeeping as a quiet understanding among elites to protect their influence and keep leverage tight. Publicly, many dismiss him. Privately, some admit he's saying what others are afraid to put on record. The idea that influence works quietly behind the scenes isn't shocking. What unsettles people is the thought that it might stay untouched. Another detail raising eyebrows is how apologies often seem to close conversations fast when controversies surface around Oprah-linked projects. Responses are quick, empathetic, decisive, and then the headlines fade. The Leadership Academy controversy overseas is often cited as an example. Leadership changed, statements were made, and reform was promised. Officially, the issue resolved, but insiders say a pattern formed. Acknowledge, empathize, pivot, move forward. It works because it delivers surface accountability while blocking deeper digging. The headlines get addressed, statements get made, and then the follow-up quietly disappears. The real story becomes what never comes back into focus, but only for people watching closely enough to notice the silence. Money moves underneath all of this too. Oprah's reach stretches across production deals, publishing empires, streaming partnerships, and major philanthropy. That kind of influence means disagreements can carry consequences, even if nobody says it out loud. People who challenge her publicly often get framed as unstable, jealous, or chasing attention. Meanwhile, those who align with her platform gain credibility, visibility, and protection. Industry sources describe it as a loyalty economy. Silence gets rewarded, dissent gets isolated. Nothing illegal, nothing written down, just incentives lined up in one direction. That's why the standoff between Sean Combs and Netflix stands out. When he threatens lawsuits and Netflix doesn't back down, observers notice how rare that kind of clash really is.
The Justice Department has finally released some of the highly anticipated Epstein files. More than 300,000 pages of documents related to the late convicted offender were made public today. They include photos, flight logs, grand jury testimony, and a lot of heavy.
Most companies lean toward quiet compromise. Netflix choosing not to flinch shifts the energy of the moment. The pressure builds because none of these stories sit alone anymore. Every new scandal pulls older ones back into public view. Every documentary, court filing, or resurfaced clip reactivates unresolved tensions. Oprah's consistent distance from direct consequences becomes the thread connecting stories that would otherwise seem unrelated. Insiders now say the bigger question isn't whether every allegation is true or false. It's whether accountability gets applied evenly across the board. And that answer shapes public trust, not just in her, but in the entire system that elevated her. Now the tone is shifting from curiosity to anticipation. People aren't just watching Oprah. They're watching the people who once defended her, partnered with her, and benefited from standing in her circle. Silence from allies can hit louder than any denial. The industry feels like it's waiting for a crack in the wall. One moment where protection slips or a former insider decides the price of speaking out is finally worth it. Until that happens, speculation fills the empty space. The narrative keeps tightening, fed just as much by what's missing as by what's happening in plain sight. What rarely shows up in official reports is the atmosphere described by people who say they were harmed while moving through powerful circles. Advocates who work with support groups talk about a climate where fear does most of the work. Reporting misconduct may be legally possible, but emotionally it feels impossible. Some believe that the second they go to authorities, their lives could unravel, careers stall, opportunities dry up, private details leak in ways that feel calculated. The fear isn't abstract. It's built on stories from individuals who tried to report issues and later felt isolated or quietly discouraged from pushing forward. No dramatic threats, no paper trail, just subtle signals that the system is not on their side. Industry gatekeepers don't need to say much. Consequences travel fast through reputation alone. People worry about losing jobs, housing stability, or support networks. The deeper fear isn't only retaliation, it's social and economic erasure, while those accused continue operating without pause. That imbalance is what makes the situation feel heavy. What makes it even harder to unpack is how layered everything appears. Powerful figures are rarely seen at the point of conflict. There are managers, legal teams, foundations, and media voices in between. Those layers absorb the heat, keeping the center protected and the system moving forward. Original word count, 299 words. Rewritten word count, 314 words. When complaints surface, they often get redirected into processes that promise care but deliver delay. Paper trails break apart. Jurisdictions get blurry. People who step forward are encouraged to focus on private healing instead of public accountability. Insiders say this isn't random. It's a survival strategy inside elite circles where scandal is treated like a branding issue, not a human crisis. That creates a cold feedback loop. Every failed attempt to report becomes a warning story for the next person thinking about speaking up. The most unsettling layer is how philanthropy and advocacy can act like insulation. High-profile charity work builds moral credit. And when scrutiny hits, that credit gets cashed in. When allegations surface, defenders quickly point to school-funded, communities supported, lives impacted. That goodwill can function like a firewall, shifting attention away from individuals and toward vague systems or already disgraced figures. People close to survivors say this dynamic cuts deep. It reframes real pain as background noise, interrupting a celebrated legacy. The public sees generosity. Insiders talk about leverage. Survivors learn that the more admired someone is, the harder it becomes to challenge them. Silence starts to look less like weakness and more like self-preservation. As these patterns come into focus, the story expands. It stops centering on one name and starts exposing a structure that protects itself. The fear isn't just about what may have happened behind closed doors. It's about what happens afterward. The measured quiet, the polished statements, the sense that some figures operate above fallout. Meanwhile, those who say they were harmed carry the emotional weight. And people connected to power continue attending premieres, launching projects, shaping culture, and moving forward without interruption. That contrast is what keeps the conversation alive. The real question hovering over everything isn't whether a system like this exists. It's how long it can stay hidden once enough people recognize the pattern. If multiple careers seem to stall after clashing with her circle, is that random coincidence or careful design? If controversial figures repeatedly appear in her orbit before facing exposure, is that simple proximity or something people should have questioned sooner? And if accountability appears to stop right at the edge of power, who decides where that edge begins and ends? If silence keeps winning in rooms where truth struggles to breathe, what finally breaks that silence? Drop your thoughts and theories in the comments below. This story is still unfolding in real time, and sides are being chosen whether people admit it or not. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share this video so we can keep digging together. I'll see you in the next one.